Daniel, but the 8th chapter. We are Scriptural Salvation Baptist Tabernacle. My name is Andy Kanaka. You're here live in my living room. And hopefully we've worked out some of the kinks we've been working on for several weeks.
We live in this room.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. All right. We've been reading through Psalm 119, longest chapter in the Bible. We are in the section of Vav. And, all right. Hannah.
Let your steadfast love come to me, O Lord, your salvation according to your promise.
Then shall.
I have an answer for him who taunts me, for I trust in your word.
Very good.
I didn't do a very good. Take the word of the truth
Utterly
out of my mouth, for my hope is in your rules. Did I still did good?
Yes, you did.
I will keep your law continually, forever and ever, and I shall walk in a wide place, for I have sought your precepts.
I will also speak for your testimonies before kings, and shall not be put to shame. For I find my delight in your commandments, which I love.
Very good, Richard.
Thanks. You just messed up the
I will lift up my hands toward your commandments, which I love, and I will meditate on your statutes. So what I told my children, true story is, when I pick up my Bible and I look, after each of these verses, it has in the original Hebrew, it has their names in it. So that's why they have to read. Yep, you pick up a Bible. They took it out of the English though. You gotta know the Hebrew to find where it says their names.
Sure.
So this chapter 8, we have been reading the book of Daniel in English, but it was written in Aramaic. This chapter goes back to Hebrew. Verse 2:4 to the end of chapter 7 was in Aramaic. Daniel's intro in the beginning of the book in chapter 1, where he introduces himself, and the part where he says he doesn't want to eat the king's food, is in Hebrew. But then, Nebuchadnezzar's dreams, the four-metaled statue in chapter 2 and the chopped down tree in chapter 4, the fiery furnace in chapter 3, the writing on the wall in chapter 5, the lion's den in chapter 6, and Daniel's dream of the four beasts that we just went over last week in chapter 7 are all not Hebrew. Why? Well, back in the days of the empires that ruled, they had their own specific languages, but they had a language that they wrote for royalties that everybody understood. The language that everybody understood was Aramaic. So the reason that Daniel wrote chapters 2 through 7 in Aramaic was because he wanted everybody other than just the Jews to be able to read it and understand it. It was the lingua franca. It was to reach a broader audience. Events are not Hebrew specific. They have international implications. You're learning about the empires that will come through all of the end times. You'll learn about Nebuchadnezzar going crazy. You learn about the lessons that brought about the fiery furnace and the writing on the wall. These didn't have to do with the Hebrew people, the Jews specifically. Anything that's written specifically in Hebrew in the book of Daniel, though, has to do for the Hebrew people. So Daniel has a vision. There are some people that point to Daniel's written in 2 different languages as its proof that the book is fictional. They claim that Aramaic wasn't in wide use when Daniel wrote in Aramaic, and that proves that the book of Daniel is entirely made up. That is not true. There have been court documents found all the way back to the Assyrians of the time of Jonah that the language of the entire kingdom was Aramaic. From the Assyrians to the Babylonians, the Persians, they all used Aramaic so that all their people could understand a common language. So saying that because Daniel wrote in Aramaic means that the book is a work of fiction is not true. There are many scholars that say because Daniel's prophecies are so accurate, that means the book can't be true. He had to be writing it after the prophecies happened. But that's not true either, because the manuscripts of the book of Daniel were found to be dated older than the prophecies they foretold. So chapter 8 to the end of the book of Daniel is in Hebrew. So we're back to stuff that's important to the Jewish people and to us as a whole. And we will now get our favorite narrator. Beat you to it, Paul.
Yes.
Whoa.
Now,
Really? A potential... yes, I want to continue.
a potential what?
Security risk? I go to this website all the time. Alright.
Daniel 8.
If you are following along in a Bible, take it out, turn it to Daniel chapter 8. We're going through verses 1 through 8.
In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after that which appeared to me at the first. And I saw in the vision, and when I saw, I was in Susa, the capital, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision, and I was at the Ulai Canal. I raised my eyes and saw, and behold, a ram standing on the bank of the canal. It had 2 horns, and both horns were high. But one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. I saw the ram charging westward and northward and southward. No beast could stand before him, and there was no one who could rescue from his power. He did as he pleased, and became great. As I was considering, behold, a male goat came from the west across the face of the whole earth without touching the ground. And the goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes. He came to the ram with the 2 horns, which I had seen standing on the bank of the canal. And he ran at him in his powerful wrath. I saw him come close to the ram. And he was enraged against him, and struck the ram and broke his 2 horns. And the ram had no power to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground and trampled on him. And there was no one who could rescue the ram from his power. Then the goat became exceedingly great. But when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and instead of it there came up 4 conspicuous horns toward the 4 winds of heaven.
So Daniel has a vision. The 3rd year of King Belshazzar just happens to be 2 years after the last dream we saw of the 4 beasts. So we're not that long after the events that just happened. So it's different from a dream, though. This is a vision that Daniel has while he is awake. He is in the capital of Susa of the Persian Empire. Well, during Babylon, it would have been in the province of Elam. Alright, so Susa... Yes, Hanny, you need to learn to wait until after church is done, honey.
I was just asking her a question.
Well, it's not the time, Hannah. Alright. So, Daniel prophesies from Babylon, which is here. And Susa is over here. Modern day Iraq, modern day Iran. Iraq, Iran. So, scholars will point out that Daniel is having this vision in Susa. He lives and works in Babylon. Is it possible that Daniel even knew what Susa looked like? Yes, because remember, Daniel had been promoted to number 3 in the kingdom. He was up there, he was powerful, he was strong, he had traveled. There's even the possibility that during this vision, Daniel traveled to Susa and was standing there on the river and watched it. So he sees a ram with 2 horns and 1 higher. So a lopsided ram. Sounds like something we've heard before. Sounds like something we've heard before. So the ram with 2 horns. Lopsided ram. Could be a ram with 3 horns, but I think it's supposed to, yeah, it's 2. Persia, the lopsided bear from the last chapter in Daniel's dream. Persia and this ram are the same thing. Daniel's just having a clarifying vision. So this ram is Persia. There's the 2 horns, one's bigger than the other. That stood for the Persian kingdom. Persia was greater than Media. In Daniel's time, it was the province of Elam. I saw the ram charging westward and northward and southward. So Persia expanded. It got huge. It was much bigger than Babylon in territory. And that's what this vision is saying. Then, a goat with 1 big unicorn. It's moving fast without touching the ground. So we see a goat. Kind of a funky looking goat. But, so the unicorn goat, this seems like something that moving fast without touching the ground is something, a theme that we've seen before as well. Greece, in the last vision, was a leopard that had wings. Specifically, Alexander the Great. So, as I said before, it takes 2 of the beasts from the last dream and talks about them more. So we get more details. So, the goat destroys the ram. Utterly just wipes it right out. Alexander comes in, conquers Persia. He doesn't wipe it out, he takes it over and turns it Greek. Alexander becomes great. History tells us that he was Alexander the Great, so he was Alexander the Great.
And he named everything after himself.
Yes, he did. But when Alexander was 30-something years old, the vision tells us as the great horn breaks, Alexander dies, and the kingdom goes to 4 generals. So, in the last chapter, it was the leopard with 4 wings, and then all of a sudden, the leopard had 4 heads. That's what this is talking about. It's the same thing. Alexander the Great died at a young age and left his empire to 4 of his different generals.
No, the last episode had a leopard with 4 heads.
Yes, it did. And this is a goat that has 4 horns. So he leaves it to 4 generals. Cassander, who got Macedonia and Greece. Ptolemy, that gets Egypt. I love it when the Greeks do the pts. Lysimachus, northern Turkey. Seleucus, who got Mesopotamia, which would have been Babylon, Persia. And when it talks about it's scattered to the 4 winds of heaven, it means that it covered the whole ancient world that they knew of. So this is what happened to Alexander the Great's kingdom. Cassander, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, not Ptolemy, and Seleucus.
And that weird-looking animal.
And the goat with 4 horns that broke out. Anyway.
That's a Greek.
Grecia.
Oh.
So, now we're going to move on to the next. So in your Bibles, turn to Daniel chapter 8. verses 9 through 14, or you can just listen.
Out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. It grew great, even to the host of heaven. And some of the host and some of the stars it threw down to the ground and trampled on them. It became great, even as great as the prince of the host. And the regular burnt offering was taken away from him, and the place of his sanctuary was overthrown. And a host will be given over to it together with the regular burnt offering because of transgression. And it will throw truth to the ground, and it will act and prosper. Then I heard a Holy One speaking, and another Holy One said to the one who spoke, For how long is the vision concerning the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary, and host, to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, For 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be restored.
Alright. So once again, a little horn comes out of one of the four horns, but this one is not the Antichrist like we saw in the last vision. This is a different little horn. For some reason, the Bible likes to depict evil by saying they're little horns. Why? I have no idea. Even to the host of heaven. So when it talks about, well, first off, what I want to say about this chapter, or this little piece, is that I hear the word great a lot. If I write something and I use a word too many times, I pick up a thesaurus and change some of the words so that they're not all the same. It bothers me, but apparently Daniel did not have those problems. Or he didn't have a thesaurus. I don't know. But, so, when it says that this little horn was great even to the host of heaven, the host of heaven is the Jewish people. So, he was great to the Jewish people. He started off, kind of not terrible to the Jews. He gains great power, and some of the host and some of the stars it threw down to the ground and trampled on them. So this is when this little horn gets great power and decides that who to blame? The Jews. Why not? Everybody else does it. So this little horn does it too. And he throws them to the ground and he starts persecuting them. He does some terrible things to them. You don't get that from the verse where it just says he tramples on them, but he does. It became great, even as great as the prince of the host. The prince of the host is God. So this king has a lot of power. This little horn that rises up. And the regular burnt offering was taken away from him, and the place of his sanctuary was overthrown. So this little horn comes in, starts going after the host of heaven, the Hebrew people, and he takes over the Jewish temple and stops the regular burnt offering. This is what Jewish worship was. Holy moly, dog, you sound like you're sawing logs.
Wasn't there a little horn last time?
Yes, there was. Yes, there was, Hannah. There was a little horn last time, but this is a different one. So this little horn comes in and does different things specifically to the Jewish people. It doesn't last long, though. 2,300 days, which is 6 1/3 years. So the Bible tells us exactly how long it's going to last. Not 61 over 3 years, 6 1/3 years. Alright. We're going to turn in our Bibles to Daniel 8, 15 through 27.
To its rightful state. When I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it, and behold, there stood before me one having the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai, and it called, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was frightened, and fell on my face. But he said to me, Understand, O Son of Man, that the vision is for the time of the end. And when he had spoken to me, I fell into a deep sleep with my face to the ground. But he touched me and made me stand up. He said, Behold, I will make known to you what shall be at the latter end of the indignation, for it refers to the appointed time of the end. As for the ram that you saw with the 2 horns, These are the kings of Media and Persia, and the goat is the king of Greece. And the great horn between his eyes is the first king. As for the horn that was broken, in place of which 4 others arose, 4 kingdoms shall arise from his nation, but not with his power. And at the latter end of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their limit, a king of bold face, one who understands riddles, shall arise. His power shall be great, but not by his own power. And he shall cause fearful destruction, and shall succeed in what he does, and destroy mighty men, and the people who are the saints. By his cunning he shall make deceit prosper under his hand, and in his own mind he shall become great. Without warning he shall destroy many. And he shall even rise up against the prince of princes, and he shall be broken, but by no human hand. The vision of the evenings and the mornings that has been told is true, but seal up the vision, for it refers to many days from now. And I, Daniel, was overcome, and lay sick for some days. Then I rose, and went about the king's business. But I was appalled by the vision, and did not understand it.
Okay. So, Gabriel, the angel, comes. Now, Gabriel means God is my strength. Remember, Daniel means God is my judge. So Daniel, who's a judge, is getting strengthened by the angel Gabriel. He gives the interpretation of the dream. He tells us who these people are. He says it's the kingdom of Media and Persia and the kingdom of Greece. As we saw last time, where people had the kooky ideas about the United Nations and the 4 Greek kingdoms, 4 German kingdoms, and the United European Union and France. No, the Bible tells us right here who it is. Don't read too much into it. It had nothing to do with the Soviet Union and the U.S. None of that. When it talks about the appointed time of the end, this is a prophecy of a specific event. It's coming. Daniel's seeing it in about 530 BC. So he knows this prophecy is coming. And at the latter end of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their limit, a king of bold face, one who understands riddles, shall arise. So, toward the end of the kingdom of the 4 horns. So, history tells us that the 4 empires that came out of Alexander the Great lasted till almost the time of the Romans, so between 200 and 100 BC. There's a king that comes in this time who's a king of bold face. A mean guy. This is that little horn. He's Greek, and he comes at this time. So we're speaking about the end of the divided Alexander Empire. So it's very specific. The Bible doesn't make it unclear. Very specific. We know exactly what's coming. So the divided kingdom started in the 300s BC. We're 200 years in. The Seleucid kingdom gets great power and expands. I'm sure you can all hear my dogs saw logs over there. But
Paul snores really loud too.
yes, Hannah.
That's very loud.
Okay. This king, he started before 164 BC, was Antiochus Epiphanes. Here he is. Yep, that's him. Looks kind of funny when he's flat and has a...
Yeah.
But anyway.
So why does his name sound Roman?
Well, Antiochus is Greek, and Epiphanes is Greek for in the flesh. So this is that little horn. It's Antiochus Epiphanes. Epiphanes means God manifest in the flesh. He thought he was so good that he was greater than God himself. And that's who this king is. Without warning, he shall destroy many, and he shall even rise up against the prince of princes. So around 170 BC, Antiochus stormed the temple. He ended all sacrifices. He forced the Jewish people to start worshiping himself and Zeus, and he sacrificed a pig in the Jewish temple. That was a big, big slap in the face to God himself. Nebuchadnezzar has tried this in the past, didn't work out too well for him. So apparently my mic does not pick up the dog snoring, but trust me, we can all hear it.
Thank goodness.
So anyway, this is a slap in the face. Right to God himself. Antiochus Epiphanes is sacrificing a pig. He's doing terrible things to the Jewish people. In 167 BC, Judas Maccabeus, Judas the Hammer, revolts, and he takes back the temple. During this war, they get stuck inside the temple, and they have a menorah or a lampstand, and they only have oil for one night, but it lasts them for 8. Now, does this sound like something, a story you may have heard before?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we all know what it is.
Hanukkah. This is the inspiration for the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah. You won't find the story of Hanukkah in the main Bible, but you will read about it in the book that Judas Maccabeus writes.
Is that Hanukkah close to Christmas?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But they didn't even hear the dog chewing on the bone.
Well, we did. So, the Jews have another name for Antiochus Epiphanes, and it translated something as Judas the Madman, or Antiochus the Madman, because he was crazy. Daniel is told to seal up the vision. So what that meant is this prophecy is happening in the 500s BC, and in less than 500 years, it came true. It was to let everybody know that these terrible things would happen, that Daniel would see it, so that you could know that pieces of Daniel were true. And that's why this prophecy is in there. Now you know a little bit of the backstory of Hanukkah.
Clap, clap, clap. And we are supposed to snore.
Well,
This person.
okay.
Snore. Oh, my dad knows.